Recently, at a major economic forum, one of Vladimir Putin's closest advisors dropped a shocking statement. He said that the United States is preparing to use cryptocurrencies and stablecoins to secretly devalue its entire $37 trillion debt. According to him, the plan is to place that massive debt into something he called a crypto cloud, reset the system, and leave the rest of the world holding the losses. This man is Anton Kobiakov. He has been Putin's senior economic advisor for more than a decade. He's not just another bureaucrat. He has been present for nearly every major Russian economic decision since 2012. In other words, when he speaks, it is not speculation. It is a window into what Russia's leadership actually believes. And here is the surprising part. He is not entirely wrong. The United States absolutely does plan to devalue its debt. That part is true, but where he might be mistaken is in how this will be done. Russia seems to think America will simply create stablecoins out of thin air, just as it has printed dollars in the past. But that is not how stablecoins work. The reality is far more sophisticated, far more powerful. And, most importantly, it is already happening. To understand this, we need to step back and look at history. In 1933, President Franklin Roosevelt signed Executive Order 6102. With one stroke of his pen, he confiscated the gold of American citizens, paying $20.67 per ounce. Shortly afterward, he revalued that same gold at $35 per ounce. Overnight, this represented a 69% devaluation. Imagine having $100 in savings suddenly transformed into just $31 of purchasing power. Meanwhile, the government's debt became almost 70% cheaper to pay back. Decades later, in 1971, President Richard Nixon closed the gold window. This action removed the convertibility of dollars into gold, effectively pulling the rug out from under the entire global financial system. Since then, the purchasing power of the dollar has declined by more than 96%. In 1985, the Plaza Accord was signed. 5 major nations agreed to deliberately devalue the dollar by 25% within 2 years. And it worked exactly as planned. Do you see the pattern? Roughly every 40 to 50 years, the global financial system goes through a major reset. And right now, we are once again at that point in the cycle. But unlike the past, this time the United States does not need to confiscate gold or close international agreements. There is a new mechanism already in place. Instead of dramatic public actions, today the United States can devalue its debt imply by expanding the money supply. Between 2020 and 2024, the amount of dollars in circulation jumped from $15.5 trillion to nearly $22 trillion. That is a 40% increase in just 4 years. And what happened as a result? Prices soared. Housing became 50% more expensive. Gasoline rose 50%. Property insurance climbed 70%. Groceries, meat, milk, and eggs increased more than 30%. This is not just inflation. It is currency devaluation. Your dollars now buy less. But here's the critical point. The government's $37 trillion of debt still exists on paper as $37 trillion. Yet in real terms, it is already worth 40% less than it was just a few years ago. Without defaulting, without negotiating, the United States has quietly reduced its true debt burden simply by inflating away its value. The world, of course, sees this. China, Japan, and many other nations have been selling off U.S. treasuries. Foreign ownership of U.S. debt has fallen from 34% to 23%. So who will buy the debt now? This is where stablecoins come in. Many people mistakenly believe stablecoins can be printed like dollars, but they cannot. Every single unit of a stablecoin must be backed by either U.S. dollars or U.S. treasuries. And a new law, known as the Genius Act, makes this official. It requires every stablecoin in circulation to be backed by U.S. government debt or cash, with no exceptions. What does this mean? It means that every time someone buys a stablecoin, the money flows directly into U.S. treasuries. Tether already holds over $120 billion in government bonds. Circle holds $55 billion. Together, they are now among the largest holders of U.S. debt in the world, larger even than entire countries such as Germany or South Korea. And this market is growing quickly. Projections show that by 2030, stablecoins could reach $3.7 trillion in size. That represents trillions of dollars in guaranteed demand for U.S. government debt. In other words, Citizens and businesses around the world who use stablecoins to escape local inflation are unknowingly funding America's deficit. But this raises a key question. Where will all those real dollars come from to back this massive expansion? The answer lies in something called sterilized reserves. Since the 2008 financial crisis, U.S. banks have kept over $3 trillion parked at the Federal Reserve. This money cannot be loaned out. It does not circulate. It simply sits there, earning a small amount of interest. It is essentially frozen capital. The Genius Act changes that. Under this law, banks can now use those reserves as collateral for stablecoins. That means the $3 trillion that has been idle for over a decade can suddenly be activated. It is not new money. It is existing money that was trapped and is now being set free. And when that happens, the effects will be powerful. Prices will adjust. The dollar will weaken. The debt will quietly be devalued. But unlike the past, there will be no dramatic announcement, no single executive order. It will happen gradually, invisibly, through a process already in motion. The rest of the world knows this. Central banks are buying gold at a pace not seen since 1967. Over the last 4 years, they have accumulated more than 4,000 tons. Poland has tripled its reserves. The Czech Republic has been buying gold for more than 2 years straight. Turkey has purchased gold for 26 consecutive months. And China, of course, has been steadily adding to its reserves, often in amounts far larger than it publicly reports. These are not speculators. They are central banks, the most conservative institutions on Earth. And they are all doing the same thing, dumping dollars and buying gold. They see the reset coming. And what about Bitcoin? The U.S. Treasury has publicly stated that there will be no taxpayer-funded Bitcoin reserve. But that does not mean the idea is dead. Instead, it may simply be unfolding in a different way. Just as the private sector built rockets before NASA partnered with SpaceX, or built cloud infrastructure before government agencies adopted Amazon servers, the private sector is now building strategic Bitcoin reserves. Companies like MicroStrategy and large mining firms are accumulating Bitcoin. Exchange-traded funds are holding it. And at some point, the government may find a way to benefit from these reserves without ever having purchased them directly. So, when Putin's advisor says that the United States will devalue its debt, he is correct. But the method will not be by printing stablecoins out of thin air. It will be by unlocking trillions of sterilized reserves, by forcing trillions of dollars into U.S. Treasuries through the stablecoin system, and by quietly exporting the cost of this devaluation to the rest of the world. And make no mistake, the process is already underway. The Genius Act is law. The reserves are in place. Stablecoins are growing at double-digit rates every few months. Central banks are hoarding gold. The reset is not a future event. It is a process that has already begun. So what does this mean for you and me? The answer is simple. We do the same thing central banks are doing. We do not hold our wealth in cash that loses value every year. We do not rely on government debt that can be devalued overnight. Instead, we turn to hard assets, gold, Bitcoin, strategic minerals, real estate. These are the things that survive resets. History shows this clearly. In 1971, when the dollar was disconnected from gold, the metal's price rose from $35 per ounce to $800 per ounce, a 23 times increase. Bitcoin follows similar cycles, but much faster, often multiplying in just a few years. That is why understanding this process is not just about economics, it is about financial survival. The world is entering another great reset. The adjustment is already happening. And the only question is whether you will be caught on the wrong side of it or prepared to seize the opportunity.